Hello, Stephanie Crawford, all the way from New Zealand. How are you today?
Hello, I'm super. How about you?
Just awesome. We have in South Carolina, here in Charleston, we have 2 weeks of fall, and we're in the middle of them.
2 weeks?
2 weeks, yeah. We have 7 months of summer. we have
Well, that sounds pretty good to me.
Well, it's hot and humid, but we have 7 or 8 months of summer. We have 2 weeks of fall, 2 weeks of spring, and then we have winter.
Right. And you get snow where you're at?
Once every 4 or 5 years.
So not that often. Yeah.
No, no.
Yeah, we don't get snow here ever. And I'm in Auckland, the North Island. So yeah, no snow.
Oh,
And we're
yeah.
just coming into spring. So it's the weather's getting warmer for us.
Well, how long is your spring?
Um, they're fairly evenly spaced throughout the year, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, the weather's definitely changed though since I was a kid. Like a summer used to be December, January, February, and really it's kind of moved to January, February, March. It's quite interesting.
Very nice. I mean, look, I know nothing about New Zealand, but I know about marketing, and you know about bookkeeping.
I sure do.
All right. So tell us a bit about your history, because I know you had a bookkeeping business
Yeah.
and it was very successful. And then
Yeah.
what happened?
Well, I sold it. So I started my bookkeeping business when my kids were 5 and 7. And I wanted to create a business for myself, not just a job. And I wanted something that would be flexible around my children because, I didn't want them to go to after school care and I didn't want to be frazzled and rushed. I wanted to still be there and have that flexibility, but also to use my brain and to give other women in a similar situation the ability to earn an income, use their brain, and still be flexible around their children. So that was 8 years worth. I built it up and sold it, and then moved into business coaching.
Okay, I want to back up a second because
Yeah,
you gave other women an opportunity to be bookkeepers through your bookkeeping business. So you grew enough to hire employees.
yeah, yeah. I had a
Okay.
team of 6. Yeah,
Okay. I just want to clarify that.
yeah, yeah.
And then you sold it and started to coach. Who do you coach, and how do you coach? What's the
Yeah.
general gist of the coaching?
Well, I started coaching just any business because much like bookkeeping, I just really like the variety. And so I started coaching any sort of business. But pretty soon, a lot of the bookkeepers that I knew started coming to me for business coaching. I mean, it makes sense, right? I've been there, done that, sold. And so I started really getting a lot more bookkeepers, and it just made sense to niche down, I suppose, into coaching bookkeepers. And so that is predominantly who I work with these days is bookkeepers who want to build and scale a thriving bookkeeping business.
Okay. Do you coach bookkeeping or do you coach business for bookkeepers?
I coach business for bookkeepers. So I'm not here to teach bookkeeping to bookkeepers.
Okay. Okay.
I'm going to assume there's a certain level of knowledge there about the technical aspect of our role. And I take that because, much like bookkeepers, they kind of say to their clients, well, you didn't go into business to be a bookkeeper. Well, bookkeepers go into business not really knowing or understanding necessarily a lot about business and about all the hats that you have to wear. And oftentimes they start accidentally in business and, a client here, another client there. And before they know it, they're kind of like got all of these different hats that they have to wear. So I teach business to bookkeepers.
I love that. I love that. I think there's a lot of folks who work for somebody else, and then they get this idea that their boss, their employer, doesn't have a clue what's going on. They don't know. They're not making the right choices, and they, as the employee, could do so much better
Oh my God,
because
yeah. And they're making
they're really
And they're
skilled at
making
that one
so
thing.
much money off me, right? So I could just go and do this all for myself. That's across any industry, right? I've
Yeah,
heard that
yeah,
across so many different industries. My
yeah.
boss is making so much money off me. I can just go and do this for myself.
Right. And then what happens? They find out OMG, I don't know anything about running a business.
Yeah, and there's a lot to consider that they haven't thought about in the past.
So when you're talking about coaching bookkeepers in business,
Mhm.
what do you find are the biggest weak points that they have that they need to be educated on?
Yeah, so it ultimately boils down to two things, I think. So not making enough money and stretched too thin and not enough time. And the money generally boils down to pricing, not pricing correctly. Also giving away too much time, like not really tracking where they're spending their time. And so, a 5 or 10 minute phone conversation here, an email here. Oh, I'll just quickly do that. Oops, I forgot to record that time. I don't know where all this time has gone. It's got to the end of the day and I've got 4 billable hours or 3 or something ridiculous like that. So that the two are quite combined, aren't they? So the time piece is contributing to the not make enough money piece, but also they're not necessarily being efficient. They don't have great systems in place. So there's a whole bunch to think about and to look at when we're first looking at a bookkeeping business.
And would you add on top of that the fact that if they're so busy and they're so busy not making enough money that they also don't have any time to market correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. They don't have time to really focus on creating the right marketing message, on attracting the right ideal client. They'll fall into the trap of taking anybody and then sometimes fall into the trap of thinking, well, I'll just discount my rate. They often fall into the trap of not valuing themselves enough and the impact that they have on their client's business. And so all of that contributes. There's a lot of mindset piece around there as well.
You're describing to me a failing business.
It sounds that way, doesn't it? And yet some of these bookkeepers can limp on like this for many years. And they're profitable enough in that they're making some money, but they're not really enjoying their business. It's not really what they went into business for. Coming back to the flexibility and the time freedom and, having a life in a business that works for them, it stops working for them.
I think it stops for every entrepreneur who goes down that path, right?
Yeah.
I don't have any time for my family. I'm too busy. I'm worried about all the things that I have to do, but I'm not making enough money. So I have to keep working, and I'm in this rat cycle, this mousetrap. I'm just running and running and running, but I'm not making any progress. And I think one of the things you said that really strikes me is that they don't have any systems. But if you're an employee, it's hard to understand how to set up those systems yourself. Standard operating procedures, using the automation and the tools that are available today to speed things up. And this is inside the business as a bookkeeper, but also as a marketer, right? There's all kinds of ways that you can market from an automated standpoint if, and you said this earlier, you have the right message and you're targeting it to the right market. And if you're doing both of those things, shouldn't you also be able to increase your prices because you're a specialist?
Yeah, well, that's true. So what do you consider to be a specialist? Because we've kind of had this conversation before, and it's quite an interesting one about the niching, isn't it? Let's go there.
Okay. It's funny. You pronounce it niching. I pronounce it niching. And I think we also have a philosophical difference on that word.
Well, to a point, I think. I think from what you've said in the past that you advocate for that as, the way to go. And my philosophical opinion on that is that you could, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should. And I don't think there's any right or wrong here. It's just that it sometimes depends on where the bookkeeper is in terms of the business growth and how much experience they've had. For example, a really new bookkeeper, I think, finds it really difficult to niche because they just don't have the experience to know who they like to work with. And so sometimes I think it's a really good idea to get a lot of experience across a lot of different industries and a lot of different businesses to learn that the different industries, to figure out who you want to work with. And then if there's an industry or a type of client or, some sort of criteria that you want to niche down in, then by all means do that.
I will not argue with that. Okay. I will not argue that you don't know what to specialize in if you don't have a broad enough experience to understand the differences between various industries.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll agree with that.
Great.
The issue
Because
that
what
I have is that if you have experience and you're still not deciding on which direction to go, then you're causing your own problems.
Yeah. Okay, we have a philosophical difference on that too. Again, I think you could, but should you? Like, one of the things that I really enjoyed about my own bookkeeping business was the variety of different clients that I got to work with. And I'm kind of the opinion that bookkeeping is bookkeeping. And whilst there are some benefits to niching, certainly, like you can leverage your industry knowledge, you can create systems that will perhaps make you a bit more efficient. I still think fundamentally it comes down to bookkeeping is bookkeeping. And I loved the variety that I got, and I learned a lot from working across a bunch of different industries. And you think about accountants, like they are never being told to niche. So why are
they have the
bookkeepers
same problems?
So you think that accountants should niche as well?
Lawyers.
And now, are you talking
lawyers
about
niche.
industry?
I think there's a case to be made that every industry can narrow their focus. Now, there's a caveat to this, though, Stephanie. There's a caveat,
Okay.
and that caveat is if 90% of what you do is the same regardless,
Yeah.
then you need to change that last 10% in your messaging so that you appear as an expert to them so you can charge more. Now, you are still doing bookkeeping. It's still a variety of different businesses, but let's say you do home services and you market to them your messages, I'm an expert in home services. They say, oh, you specialize in what I do. I want to work with you. And then you go to another industry and you say, in the different wrapper, I specialize in what you do. Right?
Yeah.
You can have a different wrapper because 90% of what you do is going to be the same, but it's that little 10% of changing the language that fits that target market better that lets them think, you know what's going on in my head. You understand me. I want to do business with you. And it's that 10% that I think creates that niche specialization, which allows you to charge more.
I'm completely with you on the languaging and speaking to certain groups if that's who you are targeting. And so from what you were saying, you're saying that you might not necessarily just have one niche either. You might have several.
That's correct.
How many is several? How many?
Well, that depends on your own ability to scale, right? If you're going to scale, you at some point have to have employees.
Mm-hmm.
And so you train these people to do different things and you go and market to those independent groups.
Right. So I'm completely with you on the marketing side of things. I think if you're going to be targeting a certain group of people, then absolutely you want to use the language that they're using. That makes complete sense to me. Okay. There's no but there. There's no but there.
I was waiting for the but. However,
we're on the same page with that.
See, you thought we were completely opposite-minded on that, but we really aren't. It's just a matter of packaging it up in it's like, okay, well, yes, I am a specialist in that today, and then tomorrow I'm going to specialize in this, because ultimately everything I do is pretty much the same from a technical standpoint.
So let's talk about the pricing thing, though, because you're saying if you're niching down, then you've got the ability to charge more. But why wouldn't you just charge more anyway, based on no matter who you're serving?
Okay. My argument for that is if I don't specialize, then I don't have the perception and appearance of being an expert in that niche. I am just like every other bookkeeper that says, well, I do business for everybody. Well, then how can you charge more than the other person who's not a specialist? They're just like you. So you become a
Yeah.
commodity, and pricing then becomes an issue because you're not perceived as an expert.
Yeah, I would challenge that because I think if you're a good bookkeeper, then you're a good bookkeeper. And if you know the value and the worth that you bring to businesses, and if you're clear about the impact that you've had with past clients, and you can stand in that and say, I'm a good bookkeeper and I'm worth this amount, and I'm going to love working with you. You're going to love the impact that I bring to your business. Let's do business together.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
How do you tell somebody that you're an excellent bookkeeper? What differentiates you from another bookkeeper who says that they're an excellent bookkeeper?
Well, I'll tell you the way that I do it. I generally approach a sales conversation like that because that's typically what you're doing, unless you're at the marketing piece. Are we talking the marketing piece or are we talking the sales conversation piece?
However you want to phrase it.
Okay. So whenever I'm talking to a sales conversation, so, I've had an inquiry, and the first thing I do is ask really great questions. So I'm asking, tell me about your business. Sales conversations to me are a little bit like jigsaw puzzles in that I want to fill in the gaps. I want to find the missing pieces so that I can get a full picture of their business and of who's currently doing what, how they're currently doing things. And I find that by asking those questions and the type of questions that you end up asking as a bookkeeper that kind of wants to understand what's going on.
A good bookkeeper.
That generally helps you to display credibility and rapport at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that conversation, you're able to say, okay, so here's my understanding of your business. Here's what I think you need. And you can offer a solution to it at that point. Now, you might bring in some case studies if you feel that's necessary. You might just, by the way you're talking, come across as being credible. Obviously, that's harder to do for newer bookkeepers who don't have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we've already said that it's harder for them to niche as well. So what do you think of that approach?
I think it's excellent. And I think in that sales conversation where you're asking those questions, if you sprinkle in one or two about their industry because you're an expert, then there's less and less resistance to a higher price.
Yep.
I mean,
I agree.
Good questions overcome objections before they become objections. You already know what they're thinking. It's like, okay, you've done the books for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 different companies, right? You've done all these books. You know what the similarities are. You know what the problems typically are. And you can ask those questions that uncover whether they have that problem or they don't have that problem.
Yeah.
And then if there's something special about their industry, like e-commerce and Shopify and how it works in and integrates with, QuickBooks or, whatever the technical thing is, if you throw in that question on top of the regular questions, now they say, oh, you understand my problems.
Yeah. I completely agree with you with that. We have no disagreement there. And I think particularly when it comes to software and how to make a business more efficient, for example, here in New Zealand, we're the birthplace of Xero. And so we've got a lot of Xero clients and we've got a lot of Xero add-ons and apps that really can make a business system a lot more robust. And so there's so many of them that it's really hard you cannot possibly be across every single add-on in the Xero marketplace, for example. So typically people will focus on some that they perhaps have experience with, want to deep dive in. And so that is where you will find some bookkeepers doing a niching in a particular industry because they've got the software to back it up. For example, Simpro or Tradeify or any of those ones where they come in and work seamlessly. You've mentioned e-commerce. I do have a bookkeeper client who specializes in e-commerce because what we find, and this you might find this interesting, you might have a completely different perspective on this, but what she found was that marketers were putting people on Shopify and setting up the website and everything, and not thinking about the integration with Xero, for example, and how that accounting software was coming through. And so there was that missing piece because it just wasn't working and they weren't getting good information out the back end, and it was just becoming really messy in some cases. So that's a prime example.
I think that's perfect, because what you're describing to me from a software standpoint, being an expertise or having an expertise that in and of itself is a specialty, right?
Yes.
So it's like, okay, now you're a bookkeeper, now you're a niche industry specialist, and now you're a software specialist. So now you're 2 levels deep in being an expert. And what does that mean? From my perspective, price raises. Right. So I can do these things. I can do them more efficiently, and I can make more money because I'm no longer charging by the hour, because you're not paying me to sit there. You're paying me to solve this problem for you.
Yeah.
And I can do that more efficiently because I'm an expert. And so what were the 2 problems that you said you had? You had a time problem and a money problem.
Yep.
Well, if you can make
bookkeepers,
for bookkeepers, right? Yeah, if you had more time because you're charging more, and you're an expert, now it doesn't take you as long. You're solving those problems.
Yeah. So the way that I actually teach in a good model for a bookkeeping business is to have, I call it my bread and butter pudding model. So you have bread and butter income, which is your bookkeeping income, right? You get that client once, and typically it's just recurring monthly income so long as you're doing a good job for them. And that's bread and butter money. But then there's a layer of cream on the top on that, which is your software consulting. For some people, it's tax returns. Some people might have some other field of expertise that they can charge extra for. And that, I think, is about twice your bookkeeping rate. So that's kind of where I see that extra value coming in. And it definitely is in a level of expertise, but they're quite different. So for a bookkeeper, what I want to see is that they get bookkeepers in to do the bookkeeping, bread and butter, rollover, make some good margin on that, and that their job then becomes overviewing that work, making sure the clients are happy, and also focusing their time on the higher value work.
Let me reinterpret what you said.
Yeah, I got it.
There's only 3 ways to grow your business: sell to more people, sell more things to more people, or raise your prices. Right. And so that middle one was sell more things to the same people, right? They're already your customer. So you have a relationship, and you're saying, integrate more services, become more value added to them.
Well, in some cases it's sell more services, but in some cases it's actually a completely different client.
Okay. I misinterpreted that.
Yeah. So for some clients, they want the DIY. They want to do it themselves, but they're not entirely sure that they know the software. They're not entirely sure that they're doing it properly. They might have got things in a real mess. And so that cream on the top, software consulting and training, is helping them to, it's often a scoping and consulting piece of that. And there's often a training piece of that, helping them to get that up and running. Now, sometimes those people become bookkeeping clients because they're like, oh my God, I don't want to bar of that. That's way more complicated than I've been led to believe by the software companies who, it's all in the cloud. It should be super easy. So then they become, can you just do it all for us? So they're bookkeeping clients. But then if you do have a layer on the top of tax returns, for example, then you are selling to the same company, or sometimes you're cross-selling like that as well.
In both directions.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. I have read that hiring a bookkeeper for a business generally, how do I phrase this? Generally produces a 16% savings. So you hire a bookkeeper because, things are, kept track of better, and you have better reporting, and everything works better. you get a hold of your expenses, you know where
Hmm.
your money is, that
Yeah.
on average, a business can save somewhere around 16%. Is that hold true to you?
That seems about reasonable to me. I'd be really interested to know if that's actually a study that's been done. It'd be really interesting to read that. It seems about right. When you think about the fact that a business owner is often trying to do the bookkeeping themselves, and if it's not their strength, then they're spending way more time on it than they need to be, or they're putting it off and therefore not invoicing in a timely fashion, therefore not getting paid in a timely fashion. Oftentimes they are working late at night doing their invoicing, or they've got their wife unpaid doing it, or their spouse unpaid doing it as well. And so if you're freeing up their time, then they can go and do something that's more high value and more in their realm of expertise as well.
Yeah.
So that's freeing up that. And then you throw in the fact that with a bookkeeper, they've got better information to hand, more up-to-date information. So they've got more confidence in the numbers, and then they can make better and more sound business decisions. Then, yeah, I think totally, maybe even higher than 16%.
Maybe even higher. Now, Stephanie, you said a lot there. You said a lot of words, and I want to understand these words, because if it's true, right? If it's true that like $1 million business saves 16%, that's $160,000. You can afford a really, really good bookkeeper.
Yeah.
Right? All right, that's number one. Number two, if you're a business owner and you're doing your own books, in past years, studies have said that entrepreneurs, at least over here, average somewhere between $300, $350 an hour. And you're doing your own books and you're spending the weekend doing those books. How much
Tell
is
me where
that
you got
costing
that
you?
$350 an hour from.
U.S. Chamber of Commerce studies, entrepreneurs, small business owners, average incomes.
So would that include the likes of, plumbers and electricians and
Yes.
the
Yes.
likes? They're making $350 an hour
On average, yes. Yeah.
as the owner of the business.
As the owner of the business. And so, it's like, okay, well, let's, if it's true that that's how much they're making, then, if they spend 10 hours a week doing books,
That's a massive
how much
cost.
money is that? I mean,
It's a massive
it
cost
almost
for the
adds
business.
up to the same 16% savings.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, and that's not even,
$3,000 a week times 50 weeks, it's $150,000. So it's really, really close.
yeah. And that's not even taking into account that they're probably messing things up and they're probably doing things wrong. And then,
well, that becomes the error factor, right? That it's like, okay, now the question I'm going to pose to you right now, after all of that information, if you're a bookkeeper, should you do your own books?
Well, I don't. But I tell you what, it took me a long time to pass that off. But the other side of it is it depends on the size of your business, obviously, doesn't it? Like if you've got a team, then don't do your own books. Your time is better spent elsewhere. For some, it depends on what they're doing, because if it takes them 10 minutes a week, then fine. But if it takes longer than that, then you definitely outsource it.
Well, it all depends on what kind of volume you're running and what kind of
totally.
Transactions and things of that nature. Yeah, of course. The more complicated it is, the more it becomes necessary, and the less it becomes necessary.
A lot of my clients do actually come to that point where they're like, this is not the best use of my time. I'm going to pay one of my bookkeepers to do my accounts. I think there's a little bit of nervousness about someone else seeing their numbers in the first instance. I think there's like whether that be shame a little bit, that they're not good enough, or whatever they are, or just I just don't want them to know. So you got to get over that mindset hurdle in the first place and trust someone and go, oh, you can just see it all. It's fine.
Well, that's the entrepreneur battle, though, right? I do everything myself. I can't afford to give it to somebody else. How am I going to trust them? Are they going to do it right? Would they do it the way I do it? Like all those considerations, which lead you to not hiring the employee
Yeah.
and stunting your growth?
Yeah. So the first thing that I outsourced was home help cleaning. So I didn't have to worry, because I work from home too. So I didn't want to have to notice, hate cleaning, but I notice when it's not done. So that was
Right.
the first thing that I outsourced. The second thing I outsourced was marketing. So someone to help me to build and manage my website and to help me with Google AdWords and that sort of thing. So that was the second thing. And then all across the many years of my business, I've had marketing help outsourced. So social media help, SEO, website help. So that is an area that I think bookkeepers do not have expertise in generally. I think there's a general level of things that they could be doing, but marketing is definitely something that they need to outsource.
You're speaking my language
I'm
now.
speaking your language.
Having done a lot of research on the financial, services industry, CPAs, accountants, bookkeepers, as a rule, as a group, their marketing is non-existent. They depend on something they call word of mouth marketing. But
Yeah.
when you ask them, what does that mean? Or do you have a program that encourages and rewards people who speak well about you? Do you have a loyalty program? Do you have anything that goes out and grabs reviews and do you have a repository for those reviews? And the answer is always no, 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 no. Then you don't have a word of mouth marketing program. You have a hope and a prayer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, let's say that your next thing is like, well, and I hear this from everybody, as I'm eavesdropping on your groups, that, well, the best way to grow your business is network marketing and going out there and meeting people and telling all your friends and family and joining the chamber and joining BNI and the leads groups and doing all that. And I think, well, okay, but is that really the best way to go? It's like, that's a lot of time.
It's one way to go. It's one way to go. And I think it's part of a suite of toolbox. And for me, it worked really well. But times have changed as well. And we're a lot more digital these days. And so, yes, I think it absolutely still can work. I've got bookkeepers who still get a lot of business through the likes of BNI, but they should also be social media marketing, emailing their list, email marketing, creating lead magnets to create lists, making sure their website is up and running, participating in business groups online. There's a whole suite of things.
There are, and I will tell you this. This is my argument.
Yeah.
Is that if no matter what kind of marketing you think you're doing, whether you're doing networking, chamber, social media, speaking, doing podcasts, no matter what you're doing, you're driving people back to your website. You're driving people back to a central place that they can read more about you. They can see what services you offer. Maybe you have pricing, you have a scheduling, calendar link. But ultimately, if you don't have that one place set up correctly, you're missing opportunity. You're missing opportunity. If you're not able to show your reviews on your website, you're forcing people to go somewhere else and leave your website to go check your reviews. Will they come back? Will they come back? I don't know. If somebody comes to your website, 9 out of 10 will never come back. They will look to, it's like, oh, the dog escaped. I got to go get him. Oh, the kids are home. Whatever they were thinking, it's no longer about you.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have to have speed of contact. There must be some super fast way. And most people today want to do communication through this device. Right.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing texting, you're missing out. And the last thing is, how do you get them back? How do you get people back to your website, except depending on all the other marketing activities, unless you're doing retargeting? Now, they've been to your website and you can give them a specific message, branding, reputation, offers, whatever. So,
Yeah.
That's my thing, is the conversion.
Yeah. Love it. Really super important.
Yeah.
And you've got your own system, right?
Yes. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you. No, so really,
I'm interested, though.
what would you suggest what would be that if somebody's been in business 3 to 5 years, right?
Yeah.
They have some experience under their belt. How would you recommend in a quick synopsis, how would you recommend they take the next step to grow their business?
So are we talking specifically about growing client numbers and
We're talking about revenue. The number of clients is not necessarily relative to the income.
Yeah, no. So if we're looking at growing revenue, I'd be definitely looking at your pricing and making sure that you're aware that you're including everything that you should in that price. I think it's really important, like you suggested, to get some outsourced, like I suggested, to get some outsourced help with their marketing. You simply can't, you can't do it all yourself. It's not your area of expertise. And so leverage the expertise of someone who knows what to do. I had tremendous help with that. The next thing I would do probably is looking at how you're spending your time and is it the best use of your time. Brian Tracy has a really good quote, which I just have referred back to over many, many years, which is perhaps the very best question that you can ask yourself and repeat over and over is this the best use of my time right now? And you will find that there's so many things that you're doing that are just not. They could be outsourced. They could be made more efficient. You're faffing around. Do you have that phrase?
You're what?
Faffing around. As soon as I said that, I'm like, wait, that might be a Kiwi word, or a Kiwi and Australian word. Faffing around. It's like mucking around, messing around.
I think it would be a different F word in America.
Well, that too. It also means that. Yeah. So just generally, not making the best use of your time. So really looking at where your time is going and just thinking, is this the best use of my time? Or, is my time worth more than this? And oftentimes, it's really looking at the clients that you've got as well. And in my experience, a lot of our lowest paying clients are, the ones that we got because, we just took anything. They're often our most demanding clients too. Yeah. And so they really stress us out and they take more time than they should. So that's, look at your client list too, maybe fire some clients.
So that's the Pareto principle in action there, 80,
yeah.
20, your 20 best, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, 80% of your revenue comes from them, but your 80% of your problems come from your 20 worst.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. It's kind of a hard and fast rule, isn't it?
It really, really is.
Yeah.
All right, Stephanie, I have some questions for you, right?
Okay.
Non bookkeeping, but maybe. Okay. What's something important to your daily routine that you wish you had started sooner?
Taking breaks.
Now, is this a physical break or a mental break or both?
Both. So I think oftentimes we are just, head down, get on with the work, move on to the next thing. But it's really important that we take regular breaks. Our brain is far more productive as a result of it when we come back to it. So taking regular breaks, and I'm not just talking even during the day too, I mean like not working weekends, or evenings, taking holidays and vacations. So, yeah, the research proves that you're actually far more productive. It seems counterintuitive, but it's not.
Well, it doesn't to me. I mean, neuroscience is all on board with exactly what you're saying, is that if you don't give your conscious mind a break, your subconscious mind can't work and solve the problem for you.
Yeah, I've solved amazing problems when I've been out hanging out the washing because simply it's just like percolating in the back of my mind.
Whoa. Are you saying you haven't outsourced the laundry?
No, but my partner's really good at it. I have to admit, he does most of it.
Awesome. All right. So what is something that most people think is important, but you can skip entirely?
Something that most people think is important, but you can skip entirely. Oh, I've got something. You know, in Outlook, where you've got your inbox and then people have like lots of different folders underneath it, one for each client sometimes, and they like drag things in there because they want to save things and file things nice and neatly. Delete and archive are your friends. Basically, read it. If you're never going to look at it again, delete. If it's something that you will potentially need to refer back to or have evidence of, then hit archive. The search features within Outlook and Gmail is the same, are so good that you can find it when you need it.
Awesome. I like that a lot. I'm the guy that has 94,000 unopened emails in Gmail.
Well, you know, the thing to do with it, and I've done this a couple of times too, because when it gets out of control, is just like anything from like before a month ago, just highlight them all and archive them, because if they're not dealt with by now, if they haven't come screaming back to you, then they're not important.
You know, back in the day, I worked for GE Capital. And this is back in the heyday of General Electric. And my boss had this saying, is like, you know, it's like you go to him with it, like, it's an emergency. It's an emergency. He's like, is it? Come back tomorrow. We'll see if it is.
That's hilarious. I love it.
You know, if it was still urgent tomorrow, we'll talk about it. Otherwise, get out of my office.
Yeah. Got it. That's interesting.
All right. Last question. What is something you did radically different than your peers 5 years ago that led to pushback from them, but served you well in the long run?
5 years ago, I created my online coaching program, my course. And so I created a whole bunch of modules based on my experience of coaching bookkeepers. And this is my From Bookkeeper to Business Owner coaching program. Now, that has since morphed into a standalone online course and 12-month coaching programs. And it's also led me into niching, specifically into bookkeepers. So that was 5 years ago. Now, that's not to say that I don't coach other businesses from time to time. I do, because I do quite like the variety, but predominantly I'm coaching bookkeepers, and it started about 5 years ago when I created this suite of modules to take bookkeepers from bookkeeper to business owner.
Okay, so what was the pushback though? That seems like a logical thing to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are not doing it though, coaching. They're still kind of doing that one-to-one coaching thing. I don't know that I had any pushback per se, specifically from within my industry, and whether that's because I just chose not to take any notice, or
okay, fair enough,
if it actually just wasn't there. But it's probably a general sense of direction that a lot of coaches are going in anyway. But for bookkeepers, you know, they can't get one-to-one coaching with me generally anymore outside of that coaching program. So, you know, for some of them, they did come to me, and so here's some pushback. They do occasionally still come to me and say, can I just get a one-off session, or, you know, a package of 6? I don't do that. You've got to, you know, be committed.
You're all in or you're all out.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Because, you know, yes, I could absolutely make a difference to someone in an hour. I could totally send them on their way. But is that the best use of my time? No.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay. So, Stephanie, where can somebody find you? Yeah. What do you do for them? And who do you serve best?
Yeah. Okay. So you can find me on my website, which is stephaniecrawford.co. And I've also got a Facebook group, The Business of Bookkeeping, which any bookkeeper is welcome to join. So just head on over to Facebook and look for The Business of Bookkeeping. So those are the two primary places, I guess. You know, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn. You're welcome to connect with me on all those platforms. I help bookkeepers to build successful bookkeeping businesses so they can get off this treadmill of trading time for money and actually build and create a business and a life that works for them, that one that they really love, that enables more money, time, freedom, and not feeling like a slave to your business, but actually enjoying it.
That is tremendous. That is tremendous.
I love it. My life's work. I love it.
All right. I want to thank you for your participation. You've been a great sport. I love the sparring. And ultimately, in all of that, we're pretty much aligned in our thinking.
We're pretty much aligned. Yeah.
There may be some
mostly
little nuance, but
maybe
pretty
that
much
80-20, that 80-20 thing.
No,
80% aligned.
It's the 90-10. It's the 90-10.
Okay, got it. I'll take that.
So anyway, I do want to thank you. This has been great fun. And any last words?
No, just thank you for having me. It's been so interesting and so cool to connect and to have this chat. And no doubt we'll chat again in the future.
I do have more questions.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie.
You're so welcome.